This video is going to be a film study look at one specific play, one situation that Ben Johnson and the Lions created during 2023. This is a Week 13 win down in New Orleans over the Saints. I want to try to illustrate what I think the Lions are responding to here, actually how they're manipulating the Saints into a particular reaction and then exposing that reaction or exploiting it with a complementary play that's built off of it. In this case, we're going to be looking at a 1st and 10 on the Lions' 9th possession in the third quarter of their 33-28 win. This was a seminal moment or a seminal game, I guess, for the Lions last year. They had lost to the Packers, remember, on Thanksgiving Day, 10 days earlier, to fall to 8-3. Scored on their opening 3 possessions, they being the Lions, touchdowns to be specific, but now only lead 24-21 as we get to this play after a 1-yard touchdown run capped a drive by the Saints offense. So this is a design play. And it produces a 48-yard reception for Sam Laporta, basically like a vertical wheel route. Somewhat unusual, the angle that he takes to run this wheel route. It is out of 21 personnel because you've got 2 running backs on the field, one being Montgomery and 2 being Gibbs, who's the guy that's going to go in motion. Pay attention to Tyrann Mathieu's reaction when Gibbs goes in motion. The Saints have matched this 21 personnel grouping. It's an irregular 21 personnel. There's not one tailback and one fullback. There's 2 tailbacks. So there's motion pre-snap. Ends up wide open. Certainly not blaming Tyrann Mathieu because I don't know what... He was the guy who was trying to check to something. But that's Tyrann Mathieu there. Let's pull this back a little bit and watch him. Watch his reaction, how quickly he reacts to Gibbs going in motion. And then in a little bit here, I'll explain why. Basically, the Lions use this exact same formation from the exact personnel group on the first play of the game. And my point here is to try to convince you of the fact that I think Ben Johnson, multiple offensive coordinators do this, but the Lions seem to be really good at, exceptional at it. It reminds me of a jet sweep that they ran against Washington, I believe, in 2022, week 2, maybe week 3, and didn't show it again until a pivotal 3rd and 13 in the fourth quarter when they were trying to close out the game, and lo and behold, they run the same jet sweep play that busted for 50 yards to St. Brown. They run it again in that critical 3rd and 13, 3rd and 14. St. Brown gains like 12, and then on the ensuing 4th down, they converted on a pass to St. Brown. My point is Ben Johnson will create a situation early in the game to see your reaction and then exploit it later on. Either way, regardless of what our opinion is, it mine, yours, others, Laporta ends up wide open, and Goff does a great job of holding the safety with his helmet. We'll go to the end zone angle so you can see what I mean. He does a great job of holding the safety with his helmet, with his eyes. There is also assistance, inside leverage route by Reynolds here to pull this corner in towards the hash. He doesn't exactly get all the way to the hash, but you can see how close they are, and that's intentional because they're trying to get Reynolds towards the safety to hold him. Also, Goff is looking dead here in the middle of the field, or the middle of the formation, I should say. And the timing at which he looks away is after Laporta has already made his break. So he's not giving it away, he being Goff. He's not giving it away. He knew it was going to be open. He was giving Laporta time to get there. Mathieu spun down to the boundary on that motion. You can see, once again, we'll check it out one more time here. He's looking for it, he being Mathieu. He knows that's not a typical stance for him or any safety. There's nothing wrong with it, but he's in that stance because he knows he's going to come forward. Why? Because he sees Gibbs over here. The same exact look or formation that Detroit used on the first snap of the game. Now it looks like there's an attempt by Mathieu to communicate to the corner, and then maybe even to the flow side or the front side inside linebacker as he spins down. Laporta's release, like I said, is timed up with Goff looking at, or looking off, if you will, the free safety. And once he gets behind linebacker level, he's basically wide open because Mathieu is in the flats. The corner took Reynolds man-to-man. Absolutely wide open. The Lions executed it perfectly. There's a little slight play-action fake, but I think it's inconsequential. It's just, for me, it's just a timing mechanism for Goff on this play with his steps. And to show the ball early. Show the ball to these guys early. They've read pass correctly, so it doesn't matter necessarily, but you're trying to show the ball early. It's a timing mechanism for Goff, in my opinion. Laporta, I think, had 9 catches for 140 on the day. This one went for 48. Saints played so much man that he was able to be a dominant force. If you recall, on a day when St. Brown only had 2 catches and no one else had more than 1 reception. Now, the Lions did convert 2 turnovers into short touchdowns, so the overall yards and offensive stats were somewhat suppressed, except for Laporta, like I said. So that play would lead to a field goal to make it 27-21. That play, the design of this, when to use it, I think is intentional. Not meaning that it has to be the middle of the third quarter, but I think there's things that Ben Johnson puts in place early and then has them in his pocket, basically like a checklist, if you will, to hold on to a play. This is first play of the game. Just to illustrate how prepared Ben Johnson is. First play of the game, same personnel, under center, same formation, same motion, and it elicits a reaction from the Saints' nickel defense. When I say nickel defense, they're not in a 4-3 structure. They're in a 5 DB structure. And perhaps one of the players rolled up on the edge as a inside linebacker from a positional standpoint, so they're in a 5-1 look. Either way, it's a 6-man front, 5 DBs on the field, hence nickel. It could be a 5-1 nickel or 4-2. Matthew spins down a little slower. Well, he hasn't seen this yet. It's first play of the game. So when I say spins down a little slower, he didn't know that the motion was coming. This was the first time he'd seen it. Am I saying that on the previous play, the one that I showed you in the third quarter, that Matthew's at fault? No. I'm saying the Saints defense was set up by the progression of the play calls. But the play calls are separated by 2.5 quarters, maybe a little bit more, slightly more, because I think it was about 4 minutes left in the third quarter when Ben Johnson calls the pass play to Sam Laporta. I think he establishes things, like a certain movement, like a boxer or MMA fighter, throwing out a straight right, and then does the exact same movement to draw out the defense's reaction and then unleashes a counter to it. Every offensive coordinator does that, don't get me wrong, or tries to in a given week. The point here for me is the timing and the ability to wait to come back to it until the right moment. The Lions, I think, check these things early on in games. They check alignment, they check responses to the motion or to the routes. And for lack of a better word, it's a checkbox. Check means come back to it later. X means nope, we didn't get the reaction we wanted. Let's move on to something else. Let's probe in a different manner. And then while doing so, by the way, while checking off those boxes, they scored touchdowns on the game's opening 3 possessions. I think it's a pretty ridiculous level of efficiency, preparation, long-term planning. When I say long-term planning, I mean let's put some things into place. How many of these situations are there? Well, we'll never know. We really won't, because we can only go off of the ones that occurred. How many times was there an X put in that box? Meaning we didn't get the reaction we wanted to try to exploit with something later on, so we can't come back to it. The other way to look at it, and I've been around people who do this, is the idea of we have something to combat whatever their reaction is, no matter what their reaction is. So we have a complementary play built in, along with our quarterback to be able to check to it. One more point about this game. The opening drive, I should say. 2 plays after that short run by Montgomery. Again, I'm referencing the first play of the game. 2 plays after that, the Lions are facing a 3rd and 7, and they're in 11 personnel. So in trips with the tight end and the running back on the same side. If you guys watch my content often, you know I call it trips A gun. A meaning the running back is on the same side as the tight end. B would be the running back on the opposite side. For my terminology and the level of kids that I had the opportunity to work with, A and B was just a quick way to delineate coverages and communicate things to each other in the 2.5 to 3 seconds before the snap when the offense lined up, so that our kids understood what to do and we didn't have these long phrases or hand signals to rely on. We could have the chalk last, so to speak. Anyway, the Saints are in a 2-high alignment. Again, first possession of the game. Lions scored 3 touchdowns, 3 opening drives. And in that 2-high safety alignment, Matthew is spinning down quickly to try to get involved in the play. Other safety, not so much. His reaction isn't as quick. Josh Reynolds does a great job of getting to Matthew. Montgomery is able to make the cut off of it. I didn't see Goff checking into anything here. Number one. Number two, there is no C-gap player for the Saints. Granted, it's 3rd and 7, so who the heck does this? When you get the end zone angle, you'll see what I mean. Basically, between those 2 players there, I think it's Davis and one of the other linebackers that the Saints have, who's pretty underrated, 53. They've got no C-gap player there. But in any case, the offensive line, I think, has checked the backside linebacker, and then Ragnow is pointing to him, as well as a DB, communicated to the right guard. They get the front side Mike Davis really easily. That's Sewell. Again, I'll give you the end zone angle in a minute. Laporta bases out on this outside linebacker, edge player, whatever you want to call him. And with no C-gap player, Montgomery is able to turn it into an end zone, or turn it into an 11-yard gain. Let's look at the end zone angle. I do think Goff checks into these types of situations plenty. Look at the 49ers game. He definitely did that one time on a critical 3rd and 9, where Gibbs was able to scamper off the left side, to the outside, I should say, to get the first down. In this case, this appears to be a call. This appears to have been called by Ben Johnson as option number 1, meaning it's a 3rd and 7. We're going to run the football if we get this particular look too high and a front that we can easily block up. Let's run the football. When I say we can easily block it up, I mean it's a down scheme here, basically. And then we're basing this guy out. You can see the C-gap defender is non-existent. It is Tyrann Mathieu. He's off screen. And if we get something irregular, we being the Lions, then we'll check out of it. If we get a different coverage look, Goff probably checks to a pass. They got a too high safety look with no C-gap defender. Running back, tight end on the same side. Again, in my terminology, A-gun. Let's just run the same side run downhill. It basically turns into a down scheme. There's no pull and kick or log. There's no pull and wrap with a backside guard, so people aren't going to like having it be called a down scheme. But I call down being a same side run, meaning let's just run off of whatever down block is successful. And in this case, Montgomery is able to make the correct cut. The mug nature of this also, I think, assists the Lions back to the all-22 for one moment. Makes the Saints kind of susceptible to being taken down, meaning everybody just blocked down. And conceptually, this is rather easy for a running back to do. I think it kind of dissuades the Saints from running this mug look often. Later on in the game, I didn't see them in that mug look as much. It at least gives them something else to consider. Should we avoid the mug looks because Goff and Ben Johnson and the Lions are willing and capable of running for the first down on 3rd and 7? I think Montgomery got 10 yards. The Lions are really blessed, first of all, to have Ben Johnson back for another year. I think I said this in a couple of other videos. I applaud him for wanting to finish the job. They were super close last year to getting to the Super Bowl. And I think his play calling is particularly astute once the defense has shown their hand. Now, I have had people bring up in comment sections, well, Coach, how can you say that? Because we struggle so much in certain points of the game, 3rd quarter coming out. So that's something I want to look at. I think he does lay traps for defenses, meaning we're going to run this play maybe once or maybe run a secondary play out of the same look, let you respond in the same manner to exploit it later on. Does it always work? Well, no. But it seems to work more often than not in my observation. As a Lions fan, you don't watch any more film than I do, but you may watch all of the games live, whereas occasionally the Ravens and Lions play at the same time and I have to choose. And I don't get to watch the Lions game until afterwards, later that night. I can't tell you how many times Ben Johnson tried to set something up and it didn't work. I can't do that because we don't know how many of his first 10 or 12 or 14 play calls were setup plays. I do suspect he does it more often than other offensive coordinators. I don't know how to prove that to you. It's just when you look at some of the situations they are able to exploit later in games, important games, mind you, and how Goff is able to adjust to some of those 3rd down situations, I think they're supremely prepared for the looks that they're going to get from the defense when they line up in the same formation. I think Ben Johnson does a great job of laying those traps, trying to exploit them in critical situations. And the initial focus of this video, the 48-yard catch by Laporta, I think is an example of that dynamic. Appreciate you guys' time, man. If you think other Lions fans would enjoy this film study look at how I think Ben Johnson designs plays early to both succeed and also be utilized as a setup later on. If you think other Lions fans would enjoy this video, please consider grabbing a link to it, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach. As an aside, trying to complete a film study video on Davenport, the D-end. It's signed with the Lions. I think it's a really astute signing by them. Low-level commitment, number one. Number two, for what they could get if he's healthy and able to contribute the way he did in 2021 for the Saints. Then you've got a really high-level guy on the opposite side of Aiden Hutchinson. Not someone who can reach the heights or the ceiling that Hutchinson can. Of course not. But if he can give you 6 or 8 or 10 organic sacks from the opposite side of the field, and you get what you're going to get from Aiden Hutchinson, 12 to 14, 15 sacks in a season, and a shit ton of holding calls, including some that aren't called, then the Lions front office comes out looking like geniuses. You guys let me know what you think of the Davenport signing. I'll hopefully have the film study video out Monday night. Appreciate you guys' time.